In this post-apocalyptic world, Anne is a lonely survivor living on a farm with her dog. She often visits a run-down town to gather supplies, making sure to cover her whole body to protect it from radiation and carry an oxygen tank to avoid breathing contaminated air. Anne's farm is in the valley, so she has to walk a long way whenever she goes to town, but it's worth the hassle to stay safe. Apparently the valley isn't contaminated. After every supply run, she also makes sure to wash her body thoroughly. At night, her dog sleeps in the same bed to help her with the loneliness. Most of the time she's pretty bored. Her routine includes checking the farm animals, the fences, and the traps she's set up in the forest. Her dog helps her search for rabbits by following their smell. One day, Anne is shocked to find an abandoned vehicle on the road. She comes closer to investigate, but at that moment her dog warns of a presence nearby. They run to hide in tall grass and watch as a man in a protective suit comes to pick up his wagon before continuing his journey. Shocked by the presence of another survivor, Anne follows him in secret. The guy uses a device to confirm this area is radiation-free and finally removes his helmet to breathe the fresh air. Anne watches John scream in excitement while he takes off his suit too. When Anne comes out of hiding, she finds John washing up under the waterfall. She rushes to tell him to get out, but since she's carrying her hunting gun, John thinks she's threatening him and points his own gun at her in return. He shoots in the air while demanding to know where the others are, so Anne puts her hand up and warns him that the water is contaminated. A terrified John quickly runs back to his wagon and uses his device to confirm he's been bathing in radiation. As he starts to puke, he rushes to get a syringe with medicine and desperately asks Anne to inject him. His screaming makes her wary, so he throws his gun away, swearing that he won't hurt her. Anne gives him the injection and offers to take him to her house. John explains that he'll need medicine once a day and asks her to burn his clothes. He covers his body before following her, also asking her to burn his body if he dies. At the farm, Anne washes John with clean water, making sure to give him a good scrub. Then she has to drag him to the bed since he can barely walk. In the morning, Anne returns to the wagon and picks up John's things, including pictures of him with a woman. As days pass, Anne continues to take care of John, always checking his temperature, feeding him good food, and giving him the injections. At night she can't sleep because she can hear his bed shaking when his body trembles because of the fever, so she spends long hours putting wet napkins on his body to calm him down. After accidentally falling asleep by John's side, Anne wakes up and prays for his recovery. She also goes to the chapel to play the organ as part of her prayers. Eventually John recovers and can leave the bed, although Anne still has to help him walk. She explains that her dad told her family to stay on the farm because the valley would protect them. Her family left one day to look for other survivors and never came back. John can't understand why the valley isn't contaminated and the lack of explanation really annoys him, but Anne distracts him with a hug. The next morning John notices that Anne is taking care of the plants manually, so he checks the house's library and reads some texts about farming. Then he approaches Anne, although he's too weak to help her yet. She tells him she can't use the tractor because it ran out of gas and the pumps don't have electricity. John tells her how to work the pumps manually, so Anne rushes to the gas station and is very excited to finally get gas. At the house, John watches her from afar using the gun's scope. Moments later, Anne is happily taking care of the crops with the tractor, and the dog excitedly chases after it. That night during dinner, John watches and prays before eating. Then he tells her that he survived because when the incident happened, he was working in a government bunker as a researcher. He eventually left the bunker because he felt trapped and wanted a real life again. Anne wonders if he was looking for his wife and mentions the pictures, but John says that the woman wasn't his wife. When it's time for bed, Anne keeps her door open on purpose. John notices her bare legs but still goes to his own room. The next day, Anne goes fishing on the pond and takes the chance to go for a swim, often exchanging looks with John while he watches her. Afterward they cook the fish together and Anne explains that the pond comes from the same pocket of water as the well, which supposedly is underground. The pond will freeze in winter, and Anne explains how difficult it was to survive last time because her house generator broke. When they go back, John inspects the generator and confirms that the engine is fried. Anne blames herself for connecting the DVD, but John tells her that the generator is very old and would have broken down anyway. Then Anne makes a joke about school projects with potatoes, which gives John an idea. They go to the waterfall and seeing the size, John confirms he can build a water wheel that could power the generator. He's going to need lots of wood to do so he wants to dismantle the chapel. Anne is against the idea and explains that her father built that chapel so he could preach every Sunday. She believes the valley isn't contaminated because the chapel has been protecting it. John points out that her father or God could have left the chapel for them to start again, but Anne still refuses. That night, the dog keeps barking at the door for some reason. The next morning, Anne goes through her usual chores and John does maintenance on the machines. Afterward he goes to a market by the road to get supplies. By the time Anne joins him, she discovers he's incredibly drunk. John throws boxes around, saying he's learned about her taste by noticing which things she's emptied and what she's left behind. That night Anne tries helping him get into bed and John snaps, pushing her against the wall as he says that he doesn't need help all the time. A terrified Anne runs to her room. The following day, John tries to pick up the eggs from the farm but finds nothing, and apologizes to Anne for his behavior. Sometime later, Anne goes to the chapel to play the organ and notices someone watching her from afar, but the person is gone when she comes out. Assuming it was John, Anne goes to the farm to tell him it's okay to listen to her play. However, John says he didn't go anywhere near the chapel. In the evening, they have a lovely dinner with fine wine and dance together. They end up kissing, but before it can escalate, John breaks the kiss and thanks Anne for dinner before going to his bedroom. Minutes later, John checks on Anne in her room and she immediately takes off her dress. However, John makes her cover up again. Anne upset and wonders what she did wrong, and John assures her he's attracted to her, but getting naughty would change things and he thinks they need some time. The following morning, Anne tells John that he can have the chapel, but John turns it down because he doesn't want to upset her again. Sometime later, while Anne is checking her traps, her dog suddenly runs up the hill while barking. Anne starts to follow and is shocked to find a man called Caleb, who swears he means no harm and only wants some water. Anne takes Caleb to the farm and has to stop John from shooting him. Then John uses his device on Caleb to check for radiation, while Caleb admits that he stole the eggs. He was afraid to ask for them because people aren't always welcoming. Caleb survived the incident because he's a mine worker and was underground when it happened. His co-workers went out to look for their families but never came back. He plans to keep traveling south and asks the duo if he can stay the night, promising to leave in the morning. The device picks up some radiation on Caleb, who admits he's weak and has already puked a couple of times. John agrees to let him stay a few days so he can recover. Caleb starts setting up a tent, but Anne convinces John to let him stay in the house. During lunch, Caleb prays with Anne and laughs because he can't believe he's made it this far. He tells some stories of his travels and John does the same, mentioning a teenage boy who stole food from his wagon. The boy had puked all over his supplies and was so sick from radiation that he begged John to end things. However, John refused to kill him and left him on the side of the road to die. In return, Caleb shares that his co-workers didn't actually leave him. One of the men tried to leave the mines, but the others wouldn't let him for fear that the radiation would get in when opening the door. This caused the man to snap and kill most of the crew before he collapsed dead too. Anne offers him her sympathies, and John is hurt because she didn't do the same with him. After Anne gives Caleb a tour of the house, John scolds her for being so friendly with a stranger. Anne complains back, explaining how hard it was to deal with her family's disappearance and having to survive on her own. John ends up admitting he did kill the boy and theorizes he was Anne's brother, so he apologizes. Anne cries but tells him it's okay. Sometime later, John and Caleb go hunting together. They discuss some radio transmissions that talked of a community in the south. Caleb's goal is to find it, but John thinks there's nobody left there. At that moment, a turkey appears nearby and Caleb says that whoever kills it first gets Anne. John gets angry and Caleb laughs, swearing he's just joking. While they chase the turkey, John tells Caleb about his water wheel idea and why he can't build it. In the end, John gets to shoot the turkey first. That night they have the turkey for dinner and Caleb brings up the water wheel, making everyone uncomfortable. He tries to think of other ways to get materials, but they don't have the tools to cut trees and the other non-contaminated buildings in the area aren't made of wood. Caleb points out that the chapel is their only choice to rebuild, which forces Anne into agreeing to do it. The next day the trio works together to dismantle the church. While they work, Caleb and Anne keep on exchanging glances. For the next few days they build the wheel together under John's guidance, but he gets annoyed when he notices that Caleb's and Anne's glances are evolving into actual flirting. The group also drives down the road to pick up all the cables from the utility poles. Later, a very sad Anne visits the remnants of the church and Caleb tries to comfort her by inviting her to go on a walk together. He tells her that his father tried to be a preacher but ended up choosing women and alcohol. Caleb didn't go to the church for many years, but his faith never left him. He thinks faith is what protects the valley and why he and Anne are chosen to rebuild. Anne is happy to finally have someone who understands, since John isn't a believer. When they return to the farm, John watches them with clear jealousy. That night, John tells Anne that she should get together with Caleb because he understands that she needs to explore instead of waiting for him. Anne cries, not understanding why John is suddenly rejecting her. John keeps insisting it's fine and calls it to be white people together. Days continue to pass with everyone working on the wheel while Anne keeps wondering what to do with the men in her life. To install the first half of the wheel, Caleb puts on the suit and risks getting into the contaminated water, which allows them to make great advances. That night they celebrate their work with wine, music, and cards. They end up jumping into the pond and playing a game to find a bottle. However, John feels like a third wheel because the others keep sharing looks and teaming up. On their way back to the farm, John breaks down and tells Anne that he loves her, but Anne doesn't say anything in return. At the house, Anne gets in bed with John, however he's so drunk that he instantly falls deeply asleep. Tired of waiting for John and dealing with his drinking problem, Anne goes to Caleb and they get naughty in the bathroom. The next morning during breakfast, Caleb gently pets Anne's head in front of John and she feels so uncomfortable that she leaves the table. The men agree to continue working without her, but they still discuss how special she is. Caleb wonders if John wishes he'd never shown up, but John denies it, saying he'll complete the wheel thanks to Caleb. This makes Caleb laugh. He says that he doesn't believe John's words and that he can tell he's jealous. He even admits he may stay on the farm instead of searching for the community. In the afternoon, Caleb puts on the suit again to help John finish the project. They carefully install the last parts and soon the wheel is working perfectly. After a short celebration, Caleb starts climbing back and slips on the wet rocks. Luckily John holds the rope tightly, keeping him from falling. Then Caleb safely makes his way to the top, only to slip again. John grabs the rope at the last second but doesn't move. He exchanges a serious look with Caleb as he wonders what to do. Sometime later, John returns to the farm and tries to apologize for last night. John interrupts her to explain that Caleb left to look for the community in the south. Anne refuses to believe it and goes looking for him, but no matter how much she runs, she can't find him. John finishes all the connections and the farm finally has electricity. When Anne returns, she discovers that John has moved the organ to the barn. She sits down to play and John is happy to enjoy her music. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.